let's start with Epstein, because you wrote a great piece in Racket just today. And the headline here was "The Jeffrey Epstein story is beginning to smell like Russiagate." And this is such interesting framing that I feel like has gone by people. You had a post on the 17th where the headline was "The Epstein Circus will shatter our last delusions." So as somebody who's covered the intelligence community and elite corruption for a really long time, and even some of the people who are popping up in these emails, unsurprisingly, what are your big takeaways as the estate document dump that we got last week continues to be kind of hashed out as everyone gets a chance to go through these 20,000 documents?
Well, on the one hand, it's fascinating, right? Because we see things like the exchange with Stacey Plaskett, where the what's fascinating about that is the idea that a member of Congress would be in the middle of a hearing, taking essentially dictation from a donor or somebody behind the scenes, and asking questions without having any knowledge of the facts of the situation. That speaks more to the sort of grave incompetence of the current crop of members, because once upon a time it used to be your aide or the chief of staff of the committee who would be telling you something and handing you a sheet with some things on it. But for people to be texting in the middle of a hearing with somebody like Epstein and then just asking a question, not knowing who the person is, it's incredible, and it is very revelatory. On the flip side, though, I read a lot of the stuff, and overwhelmingly it's banal and boring. Even the Larry Summers thing, which was it's actually quite comic, the exchange, but there's nothing in there that speaks to a vast intelligence conspiracy or anything like that. So that's why I wrote the thing I did today, because there are all these assumptions that are being built into the coverage that are, I think, are kind of troubling. But they're not proven out yet, and that's everybody's in kind of a mania about the whole thing. But we'll see. We'll see what comes of it. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see what documents are actually produced. You mentioned that you have some insight into the process. I'd be curious to hear what that is.
Well, the Mike Johnson was out today. I mean, speaking of Russiagate, Mike Johnson, I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but he was out, actually, I think it was yesterday, already signaling that because the Epstein File Transparency Act has carve-outs, basically, and understandable carve-outs, they always are, for national security, personal information, et cetera, that it's already, we can actually just roll the clip. I will stop putting words in Speaker Johnson's mouth. This is S6.
National security concerns, okay? The discharge requires the Attorney General to release within 30 days, quote, classified information to the maximum extent possible. This ignores the principle that declassification should always rest, and always has rested, with the agency that originated the intelligence. Why? So that they can protect their critical sources and methods. It is incredibly dangerous to demand that officials or employees of the DOJ declassify materials that originated in other agencies, in intelligence agencies.
Okay. Matt, you are used to hearing the national security excuse for not declassifying documents. I mean, this is something that goes back, at the very least, to the Kennedy assassination, which Mike Pompeo was still telling us, like a year ago, had serious national security implications if we were to release all of the files because people are still alive and sources, et cetera. So I actually think that's an important point from Mike Johnson, just to see him signaling that already, because the Trump administration is in charge of the Department of Justice right now. So, what are we expecting here?
I mean, it's ridiculous. The language to the maximum extent possible is already ridiculous, and we already saw this summer. The Trump administration, in particular, Tulsi Gabbard's department, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and the DOJ to I guess under Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, they went ahead and fought hard to declassify documents that originated in other agencies. So when there's a will, there's a way. When they feel like it's in their political interest to do so, I don't think that excuse is going to hold water. I think it's a huge mistake for them to already be signaling that they're going to be excising some of the materials, but you can almost hear the sigh of relief all across Washington. You can probably hear it from where you are now, because we've already seen this week there've been 2 pelts already with Stacey Plaskett and Larry Summers. We know there are going to be more people whose careers are going to be wrecked by this thing. It's only a question of how many. So I would imagine there's going to be pressure brought to bear to make sure that only the stuff that each party wants out is out, right? And that's going to be what the fight is.
It's crazy to me on this Plaskett stuff because Lee Fong, who we both know, has been doing reporting on her and her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein for years, as have others. And yes, these emails that were recently released gave us this wild insight into her literally being at a congressional hearing and texting with Jeffrey Epstein, who Jamie Raskin referred to as a constituent. We all know she has to be responsive to her constituent mail, so it was nice of her to respond to constituent mail during the hearing itself.
Live during the hearing, yeah, I know.
Yeah, she didn't even need an intern to go through the constituent mail. It's like, that's how responsive she is. Let's take a listen to her. This is S2 responding to questions about all of this.
And I got a text from Jeffrey Epstein, who at the time was my constituent, who was not public knowledge at that time that he was under federal investigation, and who was sharing information with me. We all know that Jeffrey Epstein's actions were absolutely reprehensible. As a constituent, as an individual who gave donations to me, when I learned of the extent of his actions, after his investigation, I gave that money to women's organizations in my community. You want to talk about texting felons? How often do you text President Donald J. Trump? That's the individual we should be concerned about.
So Plaskett, for what it's worth, was, I believe, Lee has reported this out, but she was working for a law firm that was entangled with Jeffrey Epstein literally right up until she went into Congress. Now, the Virgin Islands, obviously U.S. Virgin Islands isn't a state, so she doesn't have, it's sort of like Eleanor Holmes Norton in Washington, D.C., doesn't have the full voting privileges of a member from a state. But Matt, that's a really incredible spin. I mean, it's not good, but maybe it's the best she can do on what happened in that hearing.
So it's amazing, and I'm the exact right person to ask this question about, because Stacey Plaskett actually threatened to throw me in jail for perjury over essentially a typo. And in that clip, she says that she was unaware of the scandal. But in a deposition from 2023, and Lee pointed this out as well, when she talked about the question of trying to solicit money from Epstein for the DCCC, she mentioned that there was a problem there because of his association with scandal. So she was already cognizant of the scandal at that time. I don't know. It's at least hypocritical a little bit for her to talk about somebody else, talking out of both sides of her mouth. Also, the thing about giving the money to charity, she didn't do that right away. She actually hesitated initially to do that, which nobody pointed out. So it's ridiculous. It's embarrassing. She did work for the firm that represented Epstein when and helped him buy Little St. James Island, helped him attain a tax credit with the Virgin Islands Development Authority, for whom she had been the general counsel almost right up until the moment that deal was done, basically. So she's intimately involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and when she was actually asked in the deposition, have you ever done work for Epstein or Epstein-related entities, her answer was, I don't recall. So
Incredible.
not that great.
Yeah, I'm reading from Lee right here. He reposted his story from 2023 on X not long ago. This is again from 2023. His lead here is Democratic delegate Stacey Plaskett. Has distanced herself from convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, claiming she was completely unaware of his donations. However, recent court filings shed light on a much closer relationship between Plaskett and Epstein than previously known. His headline was House Democrat worked for Epstein's tax and political fixer. And the takeaway is that the reason Epstein was able to carve out so many special privileges on Little St. James was because he had these relationships with local officials in the Virgin Islands. He was showering them with donations, and that's how he ended up being able to operate like he did on Little St. James. I mean, it's just incredible that Lee reported this in 2023, and it takes some of these like really salacious emails for anyone to care about it, seemingly at least.
Yeah, and it's not just Stacey Plaskett. I mean, the number of people involved, that's another one of the details that's staggering. Like, there was a lawsuit originally, and there were John Does 1 through 100, and when it came to the defendants, who were essentially like government officials in the Virgin Islands Authority. So everybody involved in public service in the Virgin Islands. There are connections that are laid out in another lawsuit. I think it's United States versus J.P. Morgan Chase. I can't, if I'm not mistaken. But there are payments that are laid out in the exhibits to that lawsuit. I looked that up in Pacer earlier today. So just it's really a story so far just about kind of ordinary common run corruption and the buying of access, right? So here's a person who already has a conviction, is a registered sex offender, but is able to carve out these amazing benefits and buy an island, with tax incentives because of these amazing donations that are going all over the place, and gets access to a member of Congress in the middle of a hearing. Also, one has to wonder about some of the leadership positions that Stacey Plaskett has. She was the ranking member of the House Weaponization of Government Committee. She's she's front and center of a lot of things for a non-voting member of Congress. So that makes you wonder a little bit too. But we'll see what comes out of it.
Refresh my memory, but she was like the most aggressive, hostile, and I would argue like uninformed member of the committee questioning you. Am I remembering that correctly? She was just vicious to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really funny because I was expecting, when we were testifying about the Twitter files, I was expecting the questioning to be hostile, but I thought there would be like a colloquy where they would challenge me sort of intellectually about censorship and the national defense. But she came out right away. She called Michael and I and me so-called journalists and a direct threat to all who oppose them. And there was just all this bizarre rhetoric. It was angry and fulminating right from the beginning. I mean, Michael and I were kind of glancing at each other sideways because we didn't expect that. And that turned out to be the tenor of the whole thing. It was scripted that way. Each one of the members had his or her own attack avenue, but she was certainly the angriest of all of them. It was kind of off-putting. It was really weird in the moment.
Yeah, I remember it being really weird at the time, thinking, first of all, Matt and Michael are not conservatives. I think it was like somebody told her that you guys were like Tucker Carlson or something.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right, yeah. And now we know that she can probably be handed something 2 seconds before, and that might, result in the question. So, she doesn't know who we are. I mean, that became pretty clear through the hearing. Calling me a so-called journalist, I mean, that's a little weird. I've done a lot of long service in mainstream media and all that stuff, and written books and all these things. But to her, I was some kind of like online influencer who had never done anything, and same thing with Michael. So But I do think that this, this thing is going to be very damaging, Epstein, to a lot of politicians, probably, as more documents come out.
Let me tell you about my favorite chips, the best chips that I've ever had in my life. If you've ever read the label on a typical chip bag, you've seen like the science experiment of seed oils, MSG, dyes, and vague natural flavors, quote, natural flavors. But Vandy Crisps are part of the growing movement to bring back real food with just 3 ingredients: 100% pesticide-free potatoes, sea salt, and grass-fed beef tallow. No junk, just real food. They taste so amazing, and they leave you feeling light, energized, and satisfied with no crash, bloat, or mindless binging. My favorite flavor is definitely the Smokehouse Barbecue. I like them all, though. They're so good. And if you love Vandy, you'll love Masa Chips, Vandy's sister brand. Their 3-ingredient tortilla chips are also the best that I've ever had, and my go-to flavor, I like them all. Again, lime, I like the habanero. I also like the churro flavor. Super great for dessert. So if you're ready to give Vandy or Masa a try, use code AFTERPARTY for 25% off your first order at vandycrisps.com or masachips.com, or simply click the link in the video description or scan the QR code to claim this delicious offer. Don't feel like ordering online? No problem. Vandy and Masa are now available nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket, so stop by and pick up a couple of bags before they're gone.